Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of the Simple Pin Podcast. This isn't a regular podcast. This is an episode with Pinterest, specifically Malik Ducard, the Chief Content Officer at Pinterest. So probably, I want to say about 6 to 7 months ago, sometime this summer, I posted something on LinkedIn where there was this rumor happening within the community where people were getting the assumption that Pinterest was removing links from the platform. And as you can imagine, for both content creators and merchants, this was a big, oh my gosh, what is happening to Pinterest? Is this the end of Pinterest? And specifically, some communication had been sent that by December of 2024, links would be gone. And so I took to LinkedIn, I tagged as many people in the C-suite at Pinterest as I could to say, this is a rumor going crazy. It's taking a hold within the community, and we just need clear communication. Within 2 hours, Malik was in my DMs and said, this is not the case. We are not getting rid of links, and we want to partner with you. This was amazing because what I have wanted for years is this connection with Pinterest, something that says, how can I help bridge the gap between what Pinterest corporate is and what these small business owners are, and how we can work together to all amplify the voices that need to be amplified and help business owners achieve their goals. And so we began talking about having him on the podcast and having him talk about what are the visions for content creators and merchants on Pinterest? Where is Pinterest going? And who is it serving? And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. It's a little bit of a longer interview than I normally do, but I think you're going to love it. I think you're going to enjoy it. I feel like Malik is our people, those who are content creators. He gets what it's like to be a content creator. He resonates with that. And you'll hear that in his story when he talks about that in the beginning. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Make sure you share it with your friends. I think there's a lot of great resources and information within this episode that will support small business owners looking to use Pinterest as their marketing tool. In fact, you want to stay till the end when he delivers his elevator pitch as to why you should be using Pinterest. With that, let's dive into the interview. Malik, welcome to the Simple Pin Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here, Kate.
I am too. And I was reading through your bio and I was looking at all your extensive history. And you have previous work at YouTube, previous work at Paramount Pictures, and you've even written a children's book. And so actually, when I was reading through, I was like, oh, Malik's a content creator. He understands this. So I just want to jump off from that. Like, tell me a little bit about either you have a love of writing or content. Like, bring me up to speed with your connection with content.
Sure. Thank you for asking. I've always loved content before I even knew that word content. I love stories. I come from a family of storytellers. And I remember even going back to when I was a kid in New York growing up in the Bronx, I would go into school with little flip books that I would animate page after page. And I was like the guy at recess that people would come huddle around and see like what story Malik had today. And then when video cameras became a thing and I was able to borrow one from the school, I created, videos and short films and stories and documentaries, and even had a public access TV show back in my late teen, early 20s years. So I've always loved content storytelling, storytellers, creators, makers, doers. And, I consider myself like part of that crew of people. And I feel super fortunate that like throughout my both like professional, personal life, I've always been able to kind of stay in touch with that, stay close to that. That's what I do at Pinterest. So at Pinterest, I lead content here with a great team and a lot of great partners internally. And what we do is work really hard day in and day out to support content creators, merchants, publishers, also advertisers and brands who are storytellers, pinners who curate and create as well, and really strive to make the platform something for them where they can turn their dreams and ideas, interests into real life. And I'm happy to like dive into all of that. But yeah, for me, it goes back to the very beginning. I don't ever not remember telling stories and being part of that.
Yeah, so the storyteller piece, it really, I mean, that thread, I love the flip book, like having that. My daughter's really into animation, so I get that. So you were at YouTube for quite a long time, and then you made the leap to Pinterest. What drew you to Pinterest? Why was it the next career step for you? Or was there, I'm going to put some questions together here, but I would say, like, what drew you? And then was there an awareness about Pinterest and this platform and kind of, it's kind of like YouTube, but it's different. So tell me a little bit about the leap.
Well, it's so interesting. Like when I was at YouTube, I would look over the fence at Pinterest and, see what Pinterest was doing, how proactive they were around their approaches and policies and centering inspiration and positivity. So from a distance, it was really interesting. And when I was at YouTube, I was there, long enough that I've worked in many, different roles within content over the years. And my past or last few years at YouTube, I focused on an area called responsibility that focused on family and kids, content and product and education, social impact, health. It was kind of like the positive corner
Mm.
of YouTube. And I really jumped at the opportunity to move to Pinterest and to move from the positive corner of YouTube to the positive corner of the internet. So for me, it was a really, seamless transition, but also one where the idea of really having and working on and with a platform that centers inspiration, that centers actionability, that really proves a thesis that you can have focus on positive and inspiration and actionability and a great business, that the two are not at odds. The two are actually the reason for each other. And when you look out in the social media landscape, you might not always see that at play. There are many, platforms or other platforms that kind of lean a little bit more into enragement equals engagement. And that's the business model. And I love that, from a Pinterest standpoint, from the very early days of how and when the company was founded to now, that centering of, healthier outcomes, healthy business and, individual well-being has been something that's been a really strong focus and center for the company.
Yeah, I have a phrase that I use a lot here, which is the pinner doesn't necessarily care about you, they care about themselves. And when I say that, it's a lot of this drive towards a place that allows them to dream into their own world without the input of all the exterior. And I think so many other platforms have so much coming at you from all different directions. And it's almost like other people's stories are infusing into your life all the time. But
Yeah.
Pinterest, you get to write your own story. So I love that you connected this with that positive place. And as an outsider, what I think I've been able to observe is that in the last couple years, especially with kind of this new development of leadership, is that it's embracing that even more. It's going back to the core to say, yeah, we want to be the positive place on the internet. And I want to talk a little bit about that whole change in leadership a little bit because you're a part of that in the last couple of years. I also see that this, I don't want to call it like the dream team, right? But I will say what has been great is I've seen inspiration kind of rise up and this excitement for the future and going forward. Have you experienced that internally too with kind of this really great leadership surrounding Bill Reddy and what he's built?
Yeah, I absolutely feel that here. It's a big reason, why I'm here. Bill Reddy is really, really a great leader. And I think that a lot of that leadership and what leadership is often is helping organizations and people see the potential and the greatness, in organizations and like what are your superpowers? And I think that with the leadership that is here, we've really gotten back to almost in some ways like the beginning of what are the strengths? What do we have to, bring to the world? And I think it's several fold. I think it goes back to centering inspiration, focusing on quality experiences that doesn't necessarily mean long time spent, on the platform. Like social media, just in general, is tuned for, hey, how long can I keep you on my platform? And we're not perfect, as we know. Like, and as you know, we've had times where we actually did start dialing the knobs towards time spent, and we with the leadership here, we got back to what is time well spent. And that actually might mean not only time well spent on the platform, time well spent elsewhere, time spent helping the user. We're a visual search engine, helping the user, the pinner, get to where they want to go. Maybe the journey starts on Pinterest, but then goes to a checkout on a site elsewhere, or goes to more information on another site. So I think that focus of, how can we be more useful to our users, not in a time duration standpoint, but more in a sort of a quality of experience, a less ephemeral experience and a more sturdy experience, focusing on signals like saves. Like when you save something, that means much more than just like a quick, hit of the like. That's something that you want to come back to. That's something that maybe you want to purchase later, or an idea that means something to you. So that's been, a big area of kind of like doubling down that we've had in the past few years.
Yeah, I appreciate that too, because I know when there was this movement towards more time spent on the platform, what we heard from people who were using was that sentiment of, well, I can't get to what I would like to get to. There seems to be this block in front. And removing that block, I think you have that back again, where it is, oh yeah, time spent on planning a trip, or taking action on a project, or doing the recipe, which is the main core of the people using Pinterest, is that they find these amazing ideas and then they want to take action. So I like how you framed that, because it helps me teach actually these small business owners to say, don't just be thinking about getting a click or getting a session or getting whatever. Think about the person that you're engaging with, and you helping them complete that project, or you helping them make that purchase that is going to be a really great purchase in their life. And so I know I have felt that. And I know my mother, who is 75, who uses Pinterest all the time, will tell me all the things like, this pin won't lead somewhere. So she cracks me up. When we were going through that phase, she wasn't a happy woman, but she's happy now, and she saves all the time.
I would love to share also. You mentioned your 75-year-old, my 82-year-old mom, but when she was closer to 80, when I let her know, I was so happy to call her, like, Mom, like, guess what? Like, I'm moving to Pinterest. She said, oh my goodness, that's so great. That's where I get all my crochet patterns. But then, Kate, I told my sons, and my youngest son says, Dad, that's where I keep all my sneaker collections. My other son said, Dad, that's where I capture all my hairstyles. So it is so interesting, like the fact that there's like so many demographics and audiences who it is their Pinterest, in the way that you said, it's like not a lot of like outside influence or people coming in to pass judgment on you. It's like your personal media. I've seen it from my mom, my sons, myself. And I think that that's like one of the reasons we're resonating so much with audiences like Gen Z, who don't have a lot of spaces like that out there in sort of the social media landscape, and are finding Pinterest to be a great home for them.
Yeah. And I'm finding too, for marketers or creators or even merchants, they are saying the same thing about where they put their time with their marketing, because they are feeling so distracted by Instagram or by other platforms, where they want to invest in Pinterest because it feels like it is worth their time. So it goes back to even what you were saying, not just for the pinner to make good use of their time, but the small business owner to make good use of their marketing time. And when I looked through the Pinterest predicts that came out in December, what I appreciated was this call to multiple generations, that you could say something like Moto Boho worked for Gen Z and for Gen X, or something else worked for Gen Z and for boomers. And how unique for a platform to provide kind of the same content in the same theme, but to hit these different generations at a place that works for them, to where they do feel seen, where they can create a sneaker collection. I know my daughter captures quotes all day long. I can hear the little like ping of Pinterest kind of happening in the other room, just save, save, save. And I love and I've said it once already, but I think I'll say it again. What I have appreciated within these last couple of years is that acknowledgement by leadership to say, we're going to lean into this. We're really going to be the app that nobody gives up in a social media detox. Nobody doom scrolls on, and we're going to own that. And that has been really helpful to see as somebody who teaches marketing about Pinterest.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And two things I'll say, about that. One, back on sort of generations like Gen X, you've got Gen Z, you've got what's also millennials. What's so interesting is not only how they all live like well together on the platform, but how it all marinates. So Gen Z, our largest audience, our fastest growing audience, which is, pretty wild when you think about it, because typically as platforms age, the younger generations are like, no, like my parent or my older, like not for
My
me.
grandma.
The gra- what we're seeing is as we get older, the younger generation actually engages at a level higher than the older generations. So one, that's interesting. But two, the content that Gen Z is creating is obviously, and sharing and bringing onto the platform. Gen Z love it, but so do Gen X and millennials, to a point where they're actually consuming that content at a rate higher than content from their own generations, which I thought was interesting and, telling. But the other thing that you said about kind of how Pinterest is really, really embracing positivity more and actionability more. I think another area, honestly, like internal culture and how we talk about it more. I think that there is a much broader comfort level with sharing, like, hey, here's what we're working on, here's what we're thinking. And we're always working to get communications right. And again, not perfect, but I remember, Kate, when you put a post about something that we were being confusing. You rightly called it out and shared with us that we were being confusing. And I think that the culture is such that let's clear it up as soon as possible. The second I saw your note and we kind of shared it internally, literally within probably 2 hours, we responded to clear things up and, had to, do more work after that. So first, thank you. But two, I think that, another thing that we're really, really trying to do is let's not wait for the perfect story to share. Let's share things in motion so that we can get feedback from the community, so that we can understand what's working for the community, what's not working for the community, and then do better by the community. So thank you very much. And it comes from that space.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciated that at the time as well, because what I have always been passionate about with small business owners is to say, use Pinterest as part of your marketing. And don't get lost in the weeds, right? And sometimes we get lost in the weeds of rumors and myths and all these things. And my job is to help people rise above that. And I have found when there are holes in communication, people fill the vacuum, right? And they fill it with whatever they want. And so this for me actually was a great jumping off point that eventually led to this podcast. And it was good because it said, we're going to bridge communication. And like you said, we're going to try these things in real time. We're going to test them. We're going to see how they work. And we know that this is part of how this works. As people use a platform differently, as business uses it, they use it differently. You have to figure out what's working and what's not working, or what the needs of business owners are versus what the needs of the pinner is. And there's that tension all the time, right? What's good for the end user might not always be good for the business user. But I think, again, it's just this great point of communication, why we're having this podcast, and just to hear where y'all are at and where you're going. And I think that's a good jump off point for me to dive into, where is the future going? And let's start a little bit with, we see a lot of case studies that are around big brands and how they're using Pinterest, and they're really successful. They're doing great. And there's these smaller business owners that I think are asking themselves that question is that possible for me? And for some, they have already seen great success. So as leadership, how do you kind of ride that tension, or maybe it's not a tension, between the bigger companies that kind of already have name recognition and these smaller companies that are working to sell their products or get in front of a new audience? How do you kind of look at those two groups differently, if at all?
Yeah, we do look at all groups on platform and really, really strive to have a balanced platform and a balanced approach where everyone can be successful or find their path to success. The way we think about our audiences on Pinterest, it's threefold. So there are users, pinners, there are content suppliers, so merchants, publishers, creators, so on. And then there are brands and advertisers. And I think that one of the unique things about Pinterest, maybe compared to other platforms, is while each one of those audiences is specific, they're more profiles because it's a little bit less binary. An advertiser can be a content supplier, a brand can be a content supplier, pinners are curators and can be creators too. So while we internally organize with those three groups in mind, we also know that folks travel through those three groups. And one day I might be an advertiser, and maybe later on that afternoon, I've got a more, creator posture. And the reason why it works on Pinterest is because of our user base. When our users come to the platform, they're really in a leaned in posture, and they come to the platform with intent. They're not leaned back and passive. They're coming to do something. So ads are content too. Ads are motivating. Content can help drive sales. It all works together. Content can also drive more upper funnel inspiration that then leads to a more lower funnel sort of purchase transaction. So it really works in a more seamless way on Pinterest. Now, in terms of how we think about small businesses, there's a massive place on the platform for small businesses. We really, really try to make the platform a place that is understanding and educational for all of our constituencies. But small businesses, I believe, are the life and blood of what users come for, and brands in general, large brands, as well. But the fact that 96% of product searches on Pinterest is actually unbranded. So when you think about it, when a pinner is looking for a type of shirt or a pair of jeans, they more than not are coming like the item in mind, but not necessarily the like specific brand. There's an opportunity for both content suppliers, small businesses, and large businesses to help provide the guidance and the information to guide that user, that browser, that shopper. So unlike other platforms, and even pulling on some of my past experience, when I was at YouTube, I remember, in the early days, it was a lot more open, right? In terms of if you were a new brand, a new company, a new creator, the landscape was pretty wide. You could come in and find your real estate and build. By the time I left, close to 10 years, actually over 10 years later, almost 11, it was a crowded place. And it was hard for newer entrants to kind of like find their space. You don't have that on Pinterest. You have a large audience, but you also have a system that is designed for discovery. And I think that is a really, good mix for small businesses. Last thing I'll say, we'd love to, keep talking about that or anything you want to talk about, Kate, but like specifically on that to be like tactically helpful. We have two sites integrated in different ways, but appeal or service, these different, audiences. One is create.pinterest.com, which is really focused on content providers, supplier audience. And we update this all the time with new features and products that we're rolling out, trends and sort of paths to success and best practices that others have done and are happy to share. So create.pinterest.com. Then there's also business.pinterest.com, which is sort of a parallel on the business side. How can ads be motivating, and what are some of the new features and analytic to really lean into? So those are two specific resources. We also have communities that I think are really, really interesting and provide feedback for content suppliers. So when creator or a business owner joins a community, the community will ask questions and there's folks within the community who will provide prompt answers, and then proactive information is shared. And then we're working on an educator program also that really works with people like you who are so knowledgeable about the platform and are interested in partnering up to really, share out the latest, greatest information to communities, on and around Pinterest. So there's a lot that we're doing, but hopefully those, what I just described can be like some specific things for your audience that hopefully is useful as well.
Yeah, incredibly useful. And I would say there's already times where we will link to resources we find in there, or especially back to the unbranded searches, helping our audience know how to leverage those keywords to really get in front of people who are searching for crochet patterns or, whatever it is that they're looking for. Because if we're not leveraging that part and we're not educating ourselves around it, then we're not using it wisely. So I have to say all of these resources just continue to keep getting better and better. And now, even as you're talking this through, there's so many things that people can go access, just dive into it. I think there's even a Pinterest business newsletter people can sign up for.
Yeah,
So getting on that for sure.
yeah, just really quickly, like some of the stats and understanding like the dynamics of the platform, I think is really useful because I think that helps partners or potential partners understand what the platform is. And maybe, not every piece of content or piece of business might work on Pinterest, but others can. So like, where's the match the best? And we try to make it, easy to get started on Pinterest as well. So for example, with small business owners who have content and engagement on Instagram, we've made it easy to really just kind of turn the key and have that content and information poured over because it's your content. You shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel over and over or quickly integrate with, ones like Shopify store as well. So we've done a lot to make it easier to access distribution on Pinterest and information about Pinterest to understand really where and what will resonate with the audience on the platform.
Well, and that leads me, I have like 7 different questions, but we're just going to go with these 2. Speaking of shopping and content side by side, how does the future look as I'm assuming you're going to have to guess at this. You probably don't know yet, but the piece of distribution, right? Like when somebody searches for a keyword or a phrase, is the hope that it will be met with articles and shopping side by side? Is it just an evaluation of what people are saving? How do you see that look going forward so people can both be served educational as well as the products?
It's a great question. And ultimately, the answer, and as with many things, the answer is in the user. The answer is in like the person who is navigating. Like we would not want to, send content or send the user in a direction that the user isn't wanting to go in. We want to be able to share and surface content that helps the user on their journey. So if they are sort of higher up in the funnel, full funnel, and really more looking for ideas and inspiration for maybe a camping trip that they're going on, but they're still deciding like, where am I going to go? What environment or temperature? Then it's a little premature to start surfacing some specific like, hey, how about this gear, go to this site to buy. So we're trying to do a better and better job at 2 things. One is really understanding the user and where they're at in their journey. And the great thing is because that person is coming to Pinterest with intent and with that leaned in posture, they're coming with like action or discovery or learning in mind. We've got like a really good start. And because we've seen what they've saved, what they're browsing and the visual search kind of journey that they go on, like a user may start typing something in or surface something in their feed. Oftentimes as people, I think we often don't have the words to describe the thing that we want. And Pinterest is getting better and better. This is one of our, like, if we have a secret sauce, like this is like one of them, like helping people visually articulate what they're thinking of or what they're looking for when they don't have like the text or the words to do that. So that's one part of it, is really understanding the user, meeting the user where they're at and helping them move forward, but not preceding them and being steps in front of them. The second thing is understanding the content much, much, much better. Like if we're, doing great visual recognition, we have to recognize what that content is. We have to recognize, and by we, like our systems need to understand, what is this content associated with? Does this necklace go with this outfit? And because another one of our kind of sauces is, boards and curation and people, pinners helping us to understand what goes with what. Scale 1.5 billion pins are saved every week. So that is, a huge value